you for being here, everybody. Welcome. My name is Julie Geisinger, and I'm the campaign director for Oil and Water Don't Mix. On behalf of the Line 5 organizing team, thanks for joining us this evening for our June campaign briefing, The Dirty Truth About Line 5 Tunnel Construction. Before we begin, let's look at tonight's agenda. We'll share some brief campaign updates, then dive into this evening's special topic, The Dirty Truth About Line 5 Tunnel Construction. Bill Latka, our digital coordinator and DJ for tonight's call, will share details on this destructive construction project and the impact that the proposed tunnel would have on the Great Lakes. We'll then talk about the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES permit for Enbridge's proposed Line 5 oil tunnel, a key water discharge permit that the state of Michigan is now taking public comments on through June 30th. Whether you plan to submit a written comment or speak at the upcoming hearing on June 18th, we'll have some helpful messaging hints to share with you, and we'll even have some time to take action this evening. After, we'll open it up for Q&A. In the meantime, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. Now let's get started. Last month, Oil and Water Don't Mix and our partners were busy with several events. Groundwork Center led the effort on the ground in Traverse City on May 22nd when they hosted a peaceful demonstration outside the Great Lakes Drinking Water Conference. They had a great turnout and definitely caught the attention of attendees at the conference. Let's cue that video.
Enbridge live.
We are gathered here outside the Drinking Water Conference that is being put on by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, and we are here to remind them that the Great Lakes provide drinking water for more than 40 million people.
Line 5 is an active threat to that drinking water, and they're still considering keeping the line running and putting it in an unsafe tunnel.
Pipeline 5 has got to go!
So we're here today to urge Eagle to deny Enbridge's permits and protect the Great Lakes.
Shut down!
Line 5! And raise your voices. Don't let up the pressure. Make sure Governor Whitmer and the folks at Eagle know that Line 5 is unacceptable and the tunnel is not a solution.
Right.
Awesome. All right. And then later in the month, some of us were up on Mackinac Island during the Mackinac Policy Conference, where we held a press conference focused on the local businesses and the impacts of tunnel construction. We also then did a fun stunt where we rented a plane with a message that followed behind it that said, Line 5 tunnel, bad for business. The plane goes back and forth. Always watch this first. So the plane flew back and forth for about an hour around downtown Mackinac Island and past the Grand Hotel where the policy conference was taking place. We timed it so that flew by right after Governor Whitmer's speech and during the Pure Michigan reception that took place on the porch. Bill captured that video and did a really great job turning it into that reel. So thank you. Okay, moving on to the permitting updates. Okay, from the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. So Enbridge applied for a renewal of their National Pollutant Discharge Elimination permit, also known as NPDES. The draft permit was recently released and the public commenting period is open through June 30th. There will also be a public hearing on June 18th at 6 p.m. Eastern. So the NPDES permit is not routine construction paperwork. It would authorize Enbridge to discharge up to 7 million gallons per day of industrial construction wastewater into Lake Michigan. This includes 5 million gallons per day from Mackinac City, 1 million gallons per day from St. Ignace, and nearly another million gallons per day of hydrostatic test water and additional stormwater discharges. So these are continuous discharges, not occasional runoff, 24 hours per day, 365 days per year. The discharge is not simply rainwater or ordinary cooling water. The application identifies wastewater sources that include tunnel and portal construction water, shaft construction water, treated slurry treatment facility wastewater, tunnel drainage, groundwater seepage, hydrostatic pressure test water, stormwater, and non-contact cooling water. Sediment and suspended solids are also a major concern and could cloud Great Lakes water, smother habitat, stress fish, and aquatic organisms. The application also raises concerns about dissolved solids and chlorides, as well as oil and grease. Temperature and pH changes also matter. Lake Michigan whitefish and other prize fish are already depleted, and a significant discharge of wastewater at 85 degrees further threatens the biological community structure fish depend on. Temperature changes can affect aquatic life, especially near discharge points. pH shifts can also stress fish, invertebrates, and other organisms. Water treatment additives also remain an unsolved issue. So the application says water treatment additives will be used, but they will submit that separately for Eagle to approve. Potential additives may include biocides, water conditioners, pH agents, and other treatment chemicals. So Eagle should not approve the overall discharge framework before the public has a clear understanding of what chemicals may be used and at what concentrations and with what potential impacts on Lake Michigan. Also, drilling fluids and bentonite clay require special scrutiny. Eagle specifically asked Enbridge for more information about drilling fluids and bentonite clay, including how the clay would be collected, disposed of, and prevented from entering waters of the state. This is a red flag. Tunnel boring operations can generate slurry and fine materials that are difficult to contain. Eagle should require enforceable safeguards before approving any permit. All of this is actually quite overwhelming and quite frankly, awful. But I hope it gets you a little bit fired up because we're going to take some action on this later on the call. We're also awaiting a very big decision from Eagle on the wetlands permit, which is part 303 of the Michigan Code, and the Great Lakes Submerged Land Act permit, which is part 325. These are the big ones, the very big ones. If these are rejected, the project is essentially stopped. Like I said, big. This decision is expected on June 6th. Similarly, the Army Corps Record of Decision is also expected on July 6th. Moving on to some legal updates. Decisions are expected any day now for the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians versus MPSC and for the Level Water versus MPSC, which both challenged the Michigan Public Service Commission's permit decision. So those decisions are expected any day. Now switching gears, I'll turn it over to Samantha Cooper, who will be talking about an upcoming event that will be happening later this week. Sam?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being on this call with us tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So I know not everyone is in Michigan tonight, but even if you aren't, if you have not heard of this event and you haven't been here to this event, it's a really special annual in-person happening called the 2026 Michigan Climate Summit. Some people on this call, like Bill, are really involved in making it happen, and a lot of us will be there. And we just want to invite you and tell you some more about it. So let's see here. It's going to be this Friday. It's coming right up all day at the Kellogg Center in Lansing, Michigan. And if you are tight on cash, you can volunteer. And only for 2.5 hours of volunteer work, you get a ticket for the whole day. And there's really programming from like 9 a.m. to I think 9:30 p.m. The whole summit will close with a film about militarism and the climate. And there is a panel or a fishbowl conversation rather on line 5 at 11 a.m. that day that you definitely don't want to miss. So it's just such a good opportunity to be in person with people and meet a whole lot of folks that are just working on climate stuff. So we would love to see you there. Oh, and if you volunteer and if you attend, you get breakfast and lunch, which is pretty nice. Let's see here. So I will drop that in the chat, the volunteer link, and from there, it'll be easy to find the standard registration link if you want to pay for a ticket as well. But let me know if you have any questions in the chat, and I hope to see you there. There will be a whole art exhibit as well that we're really excited about, and the theme is collective courage. So lots of creativity, evolving workshops and panels, and just like beautiful people. So come hang out with us.
Thanks, Sam. What are fishbowl, what did you call it? Fishbowl breakouts?
Yeah, fishbowl conversations. Our friend Sarah Brads, who's a data center resistor from Saline, is leading some fishbowl conversations. And I'm still waiting to see what that is. I know it's some sort of a format where there's a rotating group of people that are in the middle of the circle having a conversation. And then she facilitates to bring other people into the circle while other people watch. So apparently it's really cool to witness. So you can check that out on Friday.
Awesome. Very cool. Looking forward to it.
And can I just say one more thing about it?
Of course.
So you know, the Oil and Water Don't Mix campaign was started like 17, 18 years ago because it was a bunch of climate activists. Pipeline fights are climate fights. And a lot of us are working on this pipeline because we have to transition to a clean energy future. So a climate campaign or a climate summit is a great place to come and get involved in ways where you live and also around the state where you can actually take action and make real things happen, like digging in and really helping to shut down a pipeline or preventing a data center or doing any number of things, advocating for clean renewable energy and where you live. It's a great way to get involved, and it's filled with regular citizens and people from nonprofits and from government and from business. It's a really great experience. So I really hope you do consider coming.
Yes, and we would love if you could share it. Share it with your friends, and your family and people you think might be interested. And let's just have a great time together on Friday and get charged up because this is hard work. So this is the type of event that you go to and you're going to feel like, oh, connection, inspiration, and you'll feel recharged. So I hope some of y'all can make it.
That's well said. I know I've attended a couple, and that's exactly how I've felt when I've left there for sure. Okay, handing things over now to Bill, who's going to talk about the dirty truth of Line 5 tunnel construction. Bill?
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did a study, and they issued their permit based on the fact that they looked at all the construction impacts and everything that would happen in order for this tunnel project to go forward. And when they did this, they created a report, and the report is right here, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Environmental Impact Statement. So, the government looked hard at what these impacts were, and it's their job to kind of list them out, put them in a document, and share them with the public. We got a hold of that, and what it really does is paint a picture of a really terrifically bad situation happening in the Straits. And that's our estimation. They don't really, they sort of keep the language neutral. But when you look at the report and you see what is happening, everything adds up, and it's kind of bleak. What they reviewed, in case you're new to this issue, they reviewed Enbridge's proposal to build a 3.9-mile tunnel through the Straits of Mackinac, and their plan is to build this tunnel and then put pipelines, the pipelines that are right now on the floor of the Straits, into the tunnel as one pipeline. They're not a decision maker, the U.S. Army Corps. It's what they do is they inform a future permit decision called a record of decision. So this will be looked at, and basically, I think the permit has already been issued. Leonard, if you could shake your head yes or no. But it was also, it's conditional based on other permits that they would happen to get from the state, and one of which is the Eagle permit coming up. So what they did is they looked at the 4 different proposals, the alternatives that Enbridge asked them to look at. And unfortunately, they also, the environmentalists and a lot of people got together and said, you also need to look at the no pipeline alternative. And what impacts would that have? Well, after turning out 80,000 public comments of basically saying you need to look at the alternatives, including shutting down the pipeline and removing it, and the U.S. Army Corps decided, no, we're not going to look at that, because I guess that's not what Enbridge asked for. And their job is to do what Enbridge asked for. There is a map of where the pipeline or what the tunnel is proposed to go. It's between the upper and lower peninsulas. In the top there, you've got Point LaBarbie, or LaBarbe rather, down to McGulbin Point in the Lower Peninsula, and it's about 4 miles west of the Mackinac Bridge. If completed, this would continue to carry 540,000 barrels a day of light crude and natural gas liquids through the Straits. And it would, and also another, just a backgrounder, this oil comes mostly from Alberta, Canada, and it is transported across Wisconsin and Michigan and ends back up in Sarnia. A lot of it's used in Sarnia. Some of it continues on in Line 9 pipeline that goes from Sarnia to Montreal. So it's primarily a Canadian oil pipeline used for Canada. Michigan gets roughly between 70 and 90%. It sort of varies in terms of how much it stays here in Michigan, but it's primarily Canadian oil. So next slide here. So here are the proposals that they studied. They looked at the no action option, which is don't build a tunnel, leave the existing pipeline going. Well, Enbridge doesn't want that. And the state of Michigan passed a law that said they're going to allow you to build a tunnel. So the preferred proposal from Enbridge was to build this massive construction project, this big tunnel. And some say, I don't know, what is it, 23 feet across, where they have to use a tunnel boring machine to kind of do this big drill. Another thing they looked at is covering the pipeline in a rock and gravel cover. That never got any traction. They also initially looked at a horizontal directional drill, an HDD. Initially, when they started to look at this, that really wasn't a consideration, but now it's more and more of a consideration, just because they say the technology is better. But it seems that might seem like it might be a better idea than blasting or drilling a giant tunnel, but it's got its own set of serious issues. And once again, they did not study decommissioning, which was really kind of unfortunate. So there are several impacts that happen with this, and we're going to primarily look at the tunnel option that they looked at. So the land and vegetation impacts involve removing 532,000 cubic yards of material from underneath the straits, and this is the spoils of the big tunnel boring machine that they would dig a giant shaft in the northern portion. They would lower this thing into lower the tunnel or the shaft. I'm sorry, they would lower the tunnel boring machine into the shaft, and they would start drilling, and then all sorts of rock and gravel would come out the back end, and then it would be carried away. This is a permanent, a permanent scar in the Straits of Mackinac. The construction footprint would disturb about 31 acres of land on both shores. There's about 5.2 acres of forest that would be cleared for the tunnel option. And I mentioned the HDD version before, and that would actually have to clear 32 to 52 acres, because what they would do there is build the pipeline just like they did in 1953. They would build a pipeline assembly corridor. And once this thing is horizontally drilled, they would build the pipeline on land and then suck it through the hole that they drilled. So that requires a lot more land. And that would be something that I guess, it's still on the table potentially. But this tree clearing creates long-term impacts because forests regenerate slowly, and the cleared areas would become open meadow, not forest, and not for the foreseeable future. The water and wetland impacts involve removing 1.5 acres of wetland. Got a problem with my, let's see here. 1 second here. I'm having an issue with my swiping. So yeah, they would remove all those wetlands on the north side, plus additional losses on each of the staging areas. The engineered and gravel rock alternative would permanently disturb a lot of the lake bottom, obviously, but I guess we'll skip past that. My notes are a little bit too inclusive here. But during the tunnel construction, there is all sorts of drilling fluid. Now, the U.S. Army Corps, this is curious, the U.S. Army Corps report says that there were 20,000 gallons of drilling fluid to be used, and that would be released into the straits during the installation of a water intake structure. And it turns out later that Enbridge is asking for this permit where, they're asking for significantly more water discharge. And that was not part of the examination that they did here for the U.S. Army Corps permit. Another issue is that the groundwater near the construction shafts would experience a temporary drawdown up to 2 feet within a limited radius. Now, they expect that to recover within a few days, but if you live near or if you have a business near the Straits, your water table is likely to suffer. So that will not be pretty. I guess I'm just bouncing around here. Here we go. The wildlife and protected species. The tunnel option would permanently remove about 7.5 acres of suitable summer habitat for northern long-eared bats and tricolored bats. And those are both federally protected. And there are 287 potential roost trees that they would remove for those bats. They're also planning to remove 8 acres of habitat supporting dwarf lake iris and Houghton's goldenrod, also protected species. They would clear that out. And they say that the tree clearing, they would time it outside the bat pup season, but I don't know. I think that might be just a little footnote here in this report. The other issue that would suffer with the Straits here is the noise and visual impacts. So all of the actions involving ground disturbance would, let's see. Yeah, so the construction would exceed established nighttime noise thresholds at approximately 44 residences near the south side of the tunnel project. There would be a constant hum, and the report says that it's going to be noticed more for aquatic species and less for people, but the potential for noise for people is also there. The Headlands International Dark Sky Park, which is a major regional attraction up there, they would experience detrimental lighting and noise impacts during tunnel construction. And there's also cranes that would be visible above the tree line, 434-foot tall cranes. And it'll basically turn the Straits into a construction zone. So there's all sorts of tribal cultural resources in the Straits that are actually part of the National Registry. The tribes have said that there are archaeological sites on the bed of the Straits which could be disturbed. The crazy thing about this is that the tribes were very involved initially until they felt that they were not being heard. And before this permit was issued, or before this report was issued, the tribal nations withdrew from these negotiations because they felt like they were not being listened to. So that's a problem because our tribes have rights to those areas. Another big impact to this construction project is the truck traffic. You know how people online will say, well, if you get rid of the pipeline, you're going to have all those trucks crossing the Mackinac Bridge. Well, number one, that's false. But the real impacts would be, imagine all that moving 500,000 cubic yards of gravel from underneath the Straits. That's got to go somewhere, right? So what they say is 162 daily truck round trips on the south side and 120 daily truck round trips on the north side. And add that to the fact that there's going to be all these additional workers. So figure in another 350 round trips for the workers getting to and from where they're going to be living in temporary housing, most likely. And the other issue is that this is probably going to be happening during peak recreational season because the primary building time is going to be during the summer when the Straits are busy. So it'll impact businesses, and it won't be a pretty sight. So, this is sort of an artist depiction of what the construction zone could look like. There's one of those 434-foot tall cranes. It was just it's just something that is that people need to wrap their heads around, especially folks that are connected to the Straits. It's something that is going to be, it's just going to be bad. What can I say? The the EIS is really our best window into what this project would actually do to the land, water, and communities surrounding the straits, and it's worth reading closely. So when I'm finished here, I'll drop a link to the report if you're interested in reading it. It's several pages long, as you can imagine, and it's got a lot more detail than what I could go over through here. So I hope that does it. And Julie, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Bill. Certainly troubling hearing about all of these negative impacts that the construction would cause. So now we're going to talk about what we can do and take some action. Okay. So as mentioned earlier, the NIPD's public commenting period is open until the end of this month. So you may have already taken an action and told Eagle to reject line 5, reject the tunnel during a previous commenting period, but we need you to take action again, because this public commenting period is essentially our last chance to weigh in and tell Eagle and the governor to reject Enbridge's dangerous and unnecessary tunnel, and to deny Enbridge permission to pollute the Great Lakes. So many of you have submitted comments before, so this isn't new. You can use our template in the OWDM action, but we'll also encourage you, if you do that, to personalize before sending. Say a little on why it matters to you. If Bill, if you want to go to the next slide, here are some suggestions to craft some strong public comments. So focus on the facts for the water discharge permit. In this case, the facts are pretty damning, right? Enbridge would be dumping up to 7 million gallons of wastewater per day. They'd be withdrawing 2 million gallons of wastewater 2 million gallons of fresh water from Lake Michigan daily, and using chemical additives that would pollute our greatest freshwater resource. So many of you have already been asking for this in the chat, so I'm going to drop it here. This is the Talking Points reference guide that we put together that's got some more of like the technical stuff if you want more details and want to read through some of that. It's also, we've heard important to use some specific language in your public comments for this, and we have that highlighted at the top there. But because of the proposed discharge volume, duration, pollutant and treatment uncertainty, receiving water sensitivity and cumulative impacts, the public interest means that Eagle cannot legally authorize an NIPD's permit for this proposed tunnel project. So that needs to be included in your comments, and I will drop that sentence in there in case you want to copy and paste it. It's already in the action that Oil and Water has up. So you don't need, if you're using that one, you don't need to do that. But if you're submitting your comment separately directly through Eagle, you'll want to make sure that you include this. And then, so what we'll do is we have the Oil and Water Don't Mix action that gets submitted directly to Eagle. So if you'd like to do that now, I will drop that in the chat. And don't forget to personalize it. There's like a space there. You can add your own thoughts about why it's important, what the Great Lakes mean to you, personal connection that you might have if you live close or you visit all the time. So we'll take some time to do that. And we'll put on the next slide, we also have a QR code to that action. And then also encourage you to attend the virtual public hearing and meeting on June 18th at 6 p.m. to give oral comments. And I'll drop that link as well. So if you would like to register for that, we'll give you some time to do that as well. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat while you do this, but we'll give you a few minutes to do that.
I raised my hand because the chat doesn't seem to work for me viewing this via my phone.
Okay, is there a question regarding public comments?
Well, I guess I'm wondering whether you'll be sending links that you put in the chat.
Yeah, we'll send a follow-up email before the end of the week that'll have all of the links from tonight will be in that.
I guess there are a lot. And I guess what questions do I not have? I mean, there's definitely a lot going on. What?
There definitely is.
Would our president and Canada's prime minister both want this since they don't get along? What?
Emily,
is Enbridge twisting Eagle's arm? And I guess has one big thing. I'm wondering is something that has a report that the Protect the Porky group reference is in regard to the mining. Maybe our state is just has to hurry that Michigan's economy as a whole is tanking, and we need to wait for an outside savior to pull it out rather than just focusing on gardening our local economies.
Okay. Emily,
maybe it would be relevant to bring that up. Sorry.
That's okay. We're doing the action right now, so we're going to have people take the action. If they have questions specific to the action, happy to answer those. But we're going to save the Q&A for everything else to the end, just so that people can have time to do their comments.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, you're okay. If you have a comment related to the comments, happy to answer that. Greg?
No, but it's a question, but not about the comments. So
Okay.
I'll come back.
All right. Now I'll give you guys a few minutes to just submit your comments, and then we'll open up the Q&A.
I have a question real quick about the comments, Julie.
Yep.
The line that we, is important for us to include just to sort of, like tie the bow on what it is, making sure we're being very direct about what it is they can consider and what action we're urging or what decision we're urging. Is that part of the template, the written one? Because a lot of the time when I do a written template, I'll just kind of like leave part of it and like do my own thing. So is that particular line within the template we're sending people to?
It is, yes. It's in the oil and water one. Yes, it is.
Could you maybe put in the chat like what that key sentence is again, just in case just to make sure people leave that one in if they decide to do mostly their own words.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you.
For some reason, it's bolded and italic, so it'll really pop in the chat.
Excuse me, Julie, can you hear me?
Yes.
How do I submit my comment? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Okay. If you have access to your chat, we're dropping the
Yeah, I tried that. I got on the chat and I clicked on that and it takes me to a website, but it says you can register to make comments at the meeting, but it doesn't have a place for me to make comments now. I'm supposed to be making comments now, right?
Yep. Yeah, there was several different ones because there's also I had shared the meeting.
Here, Julie, I'll stick the action that you can take right there.
Okay, perfect.
There it is,
Submit
guys.
written comments here, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's the one that says, submit water discharge permit comment.
Yep. And if you scroll down, it'll say tell Eagle reject the permit, and then if you submit, put all your information in, and then in the box where all the text is, you can modify it and add anything else you'd like to it.
That's the same one I already looked at. I don't see anywhere to add comments or.
You can click into that box where the text is and add additional comments.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I'm on iPhone and the link does not allow. Will the link be available after this call? Yes, it will. We'll be sending out the link in an email later this week. You can also find it on our website, oilandwaterdon'tmix.org, under Take Action. It's the Submit Water Discharge Permit.
And you'll be sharing that talking point about the illegality of this too with the message?
Yep, we'll include the talking points as well. So we'll send all of that in an email. I'm sorry, some of you can't see it in the chat, but we'll definitely follow up with an email. Let's give it another minute or two and then we'll move on, and you can certainly continue to work on those in the background when we open it up for Q&A, or you can finish them later. There's certainly no rush. You have to the end of the month to get the comments in. So Laura, in the comment to Eagle, you should be able to click right into that text box and edit it. But if you sent it without editing, that's also okay. Let's see who's raising it. Is it helpful to make comment frequently, as in every other day until the commenting period ends? That's a good question. I know you can submit more than one comment. Bill, do you have any thoughts on if submitting our action multiple times is helpful?
I would think that if you submitted different comments each time, they're going to end up sort of lumping things together and say that, I mean, from our website, a lot of people just come and click and just send, right? So they're going to count that as, 2,000 people submitted this comment. And that does matter, but the more different comments you add, the better.
And similarly, some of our partner organizations are also doing similar actions. So if you want to sign on to any of their public comments and submit those too, that's definitely encouraged. Okay. All right, Ross, are you still on?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, perfect. We can start opening it up for Q&A as folks are still working on their comments, but we can open it up now for the group. So anybody else that has any questions that are either related to comments or related to anything else that we discussed tonight or anything else, Ross will be leading the Q&A.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We are just going to get into the question and answer now, and I'll try to do my best to answer a few that I've seen in the chat, and then I'll call on a few people that I have raised hands. And if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to drop that into the chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you. The first couple that I saw in the chat were related to the construction workers, where they're going to be housed, and the economic impacts of that population. I don't know the answer to where the housing for them is planned to be. If anyone else knows, feel free to share that information. I know that I'm glad that you raised that, because that is has been a major issue with past Enbridge construction projects in terms of impacts on the local communities, indigenous communities, missing and murdered indigenous women, especially in a Line 3 project. So that is a major concern. And I'm going to go next to Greg. I'm going to go to Greg and then Joe after that.
Okay, thank you. Listen, I'm really struggling with how Eagle can even possibly approve this. So I've written quite a few articles about it and have submitted those as my comments. But if you look back to see why Eagle was formed in the first place, the state of Michigan created it, and I'm going to read this because it's also Eagle's mission statement, which is to protect Michigan's environment and public health by managing the air, water, land, and energy resources. And this is the most important part, while taking a strategic approach that accounts for the impacts of today's actions on future generations. That should end all discussions, because they have one chance to get this right. You can't undo this in 10 years or 20 years. And their mission is to account for the actions of today on what they'll have on future generations. So, and you can go through their whole website and see their different departments and what they do. And it's all around, I mean, they oversee our drinking water for 1,500 Michigan communities. They must reduce environmental contamination. They must enforce environmental laws. That's what they're charged to. And finally, I'll end, And if you look at Enbridge's environmental record, it is disastrous. They've had 109 violations, and since 2000, that averages one every 3 months for 25 years. They've been fined nearly $300 million for those violations. That should tell us all we need to know. And in my opinion, Eagle exist to stop projects like this. So I'm puzzled. So my question is, how can Eagle possibly approve this based on their very reason for existence? So Bill, Ross, anybody, give me an answer.
I can take a crack. So Eagle, I agree that that's their mission. Over the years, what's happened is they've become an administrative permit factory where there's all these laws that have been written over the years, and a lot of them under different administrations. But basically, laws have been written to issue permits and to build stuff in Michigan. And there's laws on the books. And so the Eagle staffers, they all look at these laws that have been written, and they feel that their job is to follow the laws, right? There's a lot of laws that allow these kind of projects to go forward. And the permitting agency, they feel their job is to issue permits. And it is very frustrating when you think that there is a connection between the mission statement and the reality, and those are different things. It's been frustrating for us forever. I mean, the whole reason why we got to this point already, because every permitting agency has looked at this and said, what's my job? My job is to issue permits. Let's help them to get these permits issued. And they have the law to fall back on, because these laws say if they do X, Y, and Z, if the permit applicant does X, Y, and Z, then you should issue the permit. And what we need are better laws that prevent these sort of heinous projects from going forward. So that's my take on it.
I concur with that, Bill. That this is on the whole. I think that in a lot of ways, Eagle is sort of like hemmed in by the kind of political football that the the environment is always used as, and the influence that industry's had over just decades and decades, and we see, like, even with the EPA now, how sort of any protections are just consistently eroded away. So, similar to how no one ever had to consider the decommissioning, because that's not what the person who asked the permit asked about. So basically, it just very literally, like, the only things that we kind of are able to talk about are what the industry who wants a certain outcome frames it as. So that's definitely frustrating. So, which is why when we give comment, it's really good for us to be very specific and try to give Eagle as much as possible to work with the little bit slice of things they're still able to consider. Because it's very little, but the more weight we can add to the importance of those sort of counter indications, the better. And and they're a very beleaguered kind of department in the state government. I mean, there's the budget from the House is recommending cutting about 53% of their funding, and I assure you they already don't really get enough to do all the things that they're tasked with. So, it's definitely a very political thing. So that's like kind of our role, is to do what we can to give them as much, weight to the small window of input they are able to consider to, urge them, but give them sort of the ability to reject these. Because I tell you what, across the board, there's always these efforts to paint them as, like, in the way of progress, etc. But they well over 90% of every permit that comes to them every year, usually around 96% percentage rate. But even that rate isn't enough for industry interests.
It's frustrating. All right, Ross, got the next question?
Yeah, let's go to Joe and then Emily after that.
Hello there. Appreciate the call. This is super informative. Bill, could you run through just a high level timeline on? I get all your information, Supreme Courts here and there, and it gets a little confusing as to what we're looking at from where we are right now to when this tunnel could actually begin. And I'm also interested, how long is it going to take to build the tunnel itself? And the one point that really stood out for me from some of the information that you sent was all around the structural integrity of the soil that they're going to try and dig this tunnel in. And if the structural integrity is not there and this tunnel fails a quarter of the way through or halfway through, what happens then? Has anyone discussed that? I mean, do they just walk away and leave a hole in the ground? Do they try and dig another tunnel? Any information there would be helpful. I appreciate it.
Well, from what I've heard about from the geotechnical experts that we've been speaking with, Brian O'Mara and also Mike Foley, the report that was issued recently by Enbridge actually revealed, because Enbridge had this report 2 years ago and they didn't give it to any permitting agency. It did show that the soil through the straits is not good. It's unconsolidated, like clay stone, and which is basically oatmeal. 70% of the path is not bedrock. And early on, Enbridge would say, we're going to put a tunnel through the bedrocks through the Straits of Mackinac. Well, there's like less than 30% of it is bedrock. It's mostly clay and Mackinac, like breccia, I think they call it, and different geological formations. So it's kind of a mess. And the geological engineers and Brian O'Mara, our tunnel sort of expert, he said that there's a chance that they would get down with this tunnel machine, and because of all that unconsolidated soil, they could get 1/2 or 1/3 of the way into the project, and it'll just stop working. Now, normally, like in the Boston had the Big Dig, right, where they had a tunnel boring machine, and it took several years for them to do this, right? Well, maybe it wasn't Boston, but there was a story of one of these big tunnel machines. It gets stuck, and what do they have to do? They've got to dig a shaft from above, drill down, and take it out and put a new one in, or somehow get down there and fix it. Well, you can't do that when you're 200 feet underneath the Straits of Mackinac, right? So Brian's opinion is there's a good chance that this thing could fail. And
what happens then?
What happens then? Well, we sort of get what Enbridge wants, which is they don't want to build the tunnel. That's my personal opinion. I'll say that there. They don't want to build this. They already have what they want. They've got a pipeline that is pumping 23 million gallons a day, and they're making $1 million a day pumping Canadian oil through our straits. They would love it if that went on for another 15 years. And I personally think that they're going to find several reasons why they're not going to either start this thing, or they're going to find some reason why they can't finish it. And this law that was written in 2017 during the outgoing Snyder administration, which I'm sure was written by Enbridge, it gave Enbridge the permission to build a tunnel, but it doesn't require them to build a tunnel. And then the law says if you need we said we're going to give you 10 years to build the tunnel. If you need any extension whatsoever, you're going to get it. And so now it's already been 8 years since that law came down, or 9 years almost. And they haven't even started. They haven't dug a shovel of dirt. So will they get the permit? We don't know. If they get this Eagle permit, then they're going to technically have to start. And there's a chance that they're going to say, oh, we have to do more geotechnical surveys, and that's going to take us another 1.5 or 2 or 3 years. And then the other part, I'll let you speak, Nicole, in a second. The other, to answer your question, Joe, Enbridge had said that it'll take about 6 years to build the tunnel. I don't think that's possible. It's probably more like 10. at the least.
I lived through the big dig in Boston. It was estimated $3 billion to complete. They finally finished it. It was $22 billion. That's what it cost.
Yeah.
And that was simple, just digging underground and
Yep.
moving the dirt. It wasn't going under 20% of the world's fresh water. So
Exactly.
I think you're probably right. I think that they're going to find reason to fail and then they'll just walk away, but you're going to have the environmental damage that, occurs between that point and, the end point. So that's a problem.
I think like also important with the unknowns of, of their tunnel plans is suppose, something goes wrong. What does that mean? Well, it could mean, quite a lot of it could mean a collapse. It could mean like a real like massive disturbance at the, bottomlands up above where they're trying to drill. And they plan to keep the oil of that's currently in line 5 going. They don't plan to turn it off during this construction period at all. So basically the product is still going to be running through these, old pipelines laying on the bottomlands while they're trying to drill underneath in really uncertain conditions with no real idea of what it would mean should there be a collapse, an explosion, et cetera. So it's really dangerous. And then, just want to underscore what you said, Bill, and also Joe, the clear cuts will have already happened, right? Even if the, goodness forbid, like, there wasn't something that would rupture the oil, they're going to keep going. If they have to abandon the project, they'll have already destroyed their wetlands. I see someone in the chat mentioned, yep, they'll have already, disturbed our ancestors who are certainly resting in those places. And it's such a clear indication of they don't care about any of it. They honestly just don't care about any of it
They just
except
want to
for,
keep their
like
pipeline
you said,
going.
keeping their profits flowing 5 years after their eviction notice.
And I'd just like to raise this up that Leonard posted. The Enbridge board has yet to approve an expenditure on the tunnel. So they haven't even gone to the board yet and said, hey, we want to spend $500 million, which is what they said originally it's going to cost, or the $2 billion or $4 billion or whatever it is. They haven't asked their board if they can spend that. So how serious do you think they are about building the tunnel? Ross, you got the next question?
Yeah, thanks, Bill and Nicole. I just saw one come in the chat. And
Emily, is that
actually,
Emily? Yeah, Emily
yeah,
was next. And then
I apologize. We'll go to Emily
close to the top of the hour, so probably then maybe one more after that.
Okay.
So do you have one good question for us, Emily?
Well, I guess I didn't well, I guess I wasn't sure. I mean, I did hang up. I mean, I did hang up something. I mean, maybe I'm pretty sure that a lot of this is economically motivated. I mean, he can't. I mean, a lot of departments all the way up to the governor feel sure that Michigan's economy is so much in the red that they can't turn away any possible outside savior, whether it be Enbridge and an inexperienced middle company making its first foray into mining, or some big tech billionaire who's wanting to build a data center. But I mean, I was wondering how much good it would be bringing that up in a public comment, and I'm also wondering why Canada should even want this if they're supposed to be better than the U.S. in a lot of things. And I wonder if they want revenge on the U.S., wondering if they're creating a target for somebody who might decide that the U.S. doesn't deserve, or us as a nation doesn't deserve clean, fresh water anymore.
Yeah, I think all these are great questions, but you know what? They're looking at issuing a permit or not, so they're not going to really care about that sort of thing in a permit comment. The other aspect of this is Canada is a petrostate. They want to keep the oil flowing as much as we do. That's their main export. So the Canadian government is no help. And I don't think it's about revenge. It's about or about doing bad things for whatever. It's about economics for them. It's about making sure that their export keeps flowing. So we have Canadian partners that are as frustrated as we are with our government, the way that things are being handled. Okay, Ross, got the next one?
Yeah, I'll just read. There's a question in the chat about why the state of Michigan isn't doing anything to protect from this, and about why isn't there an emergency protocol in place if there is a catastrophic event. And I think partially what some of the things that you were just talking about, Emily, about really, uh, rolling out the red carpet for data centers and corporations and seeking jobs and sort of the economic argument. Sometimes the state has gone, I think, way too far down that road and really neglected environmental protection. And I think this tunnel project would be a big example of that if this is approved. And in terms of response, that is large. That is on Enbridge to respond, and we saw in Kalamazoo how slow the response was, and so the state of Michigan is not prepared for any disaster in the Straits, and that's why we really want to make sure this pipeline is shut down and we don't build a tunnel that could lead to another disaster, because we aren't prepared to handle that. So that's a really good question. And then and thank you, Leonard, for just adding that. Line 5 has already leaked 35 times. It's over 1 million gallons. And what that would be like in an enclosed tunnel with explosive natural gas liquids is something we do not want to see. So I think that concludes our question and answer section. And I will pass it over to Julie.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Bill and Nicole, also for all of your insight and helping answer those questions. Thanks everybody for joining tonight. So our next campaign briefing will be July 14th at 7 p.m. I'll drop that here in the chat if you would like to register in advance. Between the Eagle permitting decisions and the Michigan Supreme Court decisions, we should have a lot to talk about, that's for sure. Don't forget to get those comments in, and if you can, attend the public hearing on June 18th. And have a great night.
Thanks very much for coming, everybody.